This video is presented by MyBookie.ag. What's up, everybody? We have finally arrived to UFC 268 this Saturday, one of the biggest pay-per-view cards of the entire year, just absolutely stacked from the early prelims all the way up to the main event. And throughout, we have some explosive and entertaining fights, no matter where you start watching on the card. But I will have to say the prospect of the night is definitely going to go to Phil Hawes. He's on a massive streak right now, excellent wrestler, great power in his hands, he's developing as a striker as well, and ever since he dyed his hair blonde, he has been undefeated, just like the other Super Saiyans in the sport. I would have to say the fighter of the night is definitely going to go to Kamaru Usman, who's looking to chase history by getting another win in a rematch against the next best welterweight in Colby Covington. With this win, I believe he would definitely surpass Matt Hughes in terms of all-time greatness. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight, is definitely going to go to Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Two of the most powerful lightweights of all time going at it. Two guys that like to impose their will and power on their opponent and always looking for the finish. Definitely one of my most anticipated fights of the year. And then the fight of the night. Cannot go to other fight besides that main event. Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington before was one of the best fights of 2019. And now with both fighters making improvements and under different tutelages, both guys are under different coaches, this is going to be a lot more interesting than the first time. And with that, we're going to go right to our first fight, Iaquinta versus Bobby Green. This should be an excellent fight between two veterans of the game. I would have to say that Iaquinta is the more well-rounded fighter. He's better with his wrestling and mixing up with his boxing. He's as tough as they come. He has a great chin, and he has deceptive power in that right hand of his. Developing some of his techniques and using different kind of kicks in there specifically. Good low kicks, mix up sneaky high kicks as well now. Whereas Bobby Green, I would have to say, is the more athletic fighter. Can be the more dangerous striker overall. He's a lot more risk-taking. He will switch stances. He could be a lot trickier on the feet than Iaquinta is. Iaquinta is a lot more straightforward with everything he throws. Whereas Green works with feints. He shifts with his combinations. He's excellent on the front foot and the back foot. And the main advantage going to Bobby Green is the fact that he's been a lot more active. And not only active, he's been fighting some legit competition lately. He fought 4 times in 2020 and has already fought this year as well. He had a close fight with Rafael Fiziev, who's an excellent striker. He lost to Thiago Moises, he beat Ellen Patrick, Lando Venata, and Clay Guida. Iaquinta, on the other hand, has not fought since 2019, where he lost to Dan Hooker. Over 2 years ago. That is a massive difference in activity that is definitely going to favor Bobby Green. And Bobby Green for sure has been getting better in front of our eyes. Every time he competes, he's on a different level than before. Whereas for Iaquinta, we really haven't seen him compete. And these long layoffs of his is not really something that's new to him. Even after the Jorge Masvidal win, he waited 2 years to come back to fight Diego Sanchez. I understand there was a bunch of things going on in his life, a bunch of things going on in his career. But the important thing about Iaquinta is, even on that 2-year layoff, he was able to perform at a different level when he came back. He was definitely a sharper puncher. He was definitely a lot more technical in his game, and more importantly, displayed higher fight IQ. But what I have to say about Bobby Green is, even though he's been a lot more active, when he fights a fighter who can mix up wrestling and striking, he does not do as well against that opponent. The last time he beat a guy who mixes up wrestling and striking was an old Clay Guida last year, and before that it was all the way back to 2014 when he beat Josh Thompson. Besides the wins over those two older fighters, he's lost to everybody who mixes up the game on him. Dustin Poirier, Rashid Magomedov, Drakkar Klose, Francisco Trinaldo, and Thiago Moises. It's pretty difficult for Bobby Green to change his focus from wrestling to boxing, and Iaquinta does that very well. He's very good at putting a jab on your face and getting in that single leg. He's good at faking low and coming up with an uppercut or even overhand right. And I can find those combinations being extremely successful against Bobby Green. Also, light kicks are something that Green doesn't check that often. So there's going to be a lot of different targeting for Iaquinta to become successful in this fight. But the thing about Iaquinta is he doesn't deal well with too many jabs. Bobby Green has an excellent quick jab that can really mix up his power hand on Iaquinta, but Iaquinta is so tough. He's extremely durable. He's going to be able to take almost anything Bobby Green throws at him. But I wonder if it's going to be the other way around, as Green loves to keep his hands down. He almost never picks his hands up, and that is always scary, especially when you fight a guy like Iaquinta who could put his lights out with one punch. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Iaquinta on this one, and I'm going to go by a decision win. I think this fight is going to be very close, and it's most likely going to end on a close decision. Interesting to see that Iaquinta is the underdog in this one, and quite a bit of an underdog. I think it's mostly because of how inactive he's been in his career, but like I said before, it's nothing really new. He's come back from long layoffs before and performed very well. And then we go to a highly anticipated newcomer of the UFC, Alex Poatan Pereira, where he faces Andreas Michailidis. Pereira is known to be one of the best kickboxers in the world, to some one of the best kickboxers of all time. The guy who many known to have beaten Israel Adesanya twice, the only guy to ever knock out Adesanya in combat sports, and known to have one of the most devastating left hooks, pound for pound, out of all combat sports. That left hook of his just does not make sense. When he throws it, it doesn't look like he's throwing it that hard, but it's a death punch. It's just an off switch. He lands out on you and he shuts you off. Rarely anybody has been able to take that blow, and I do not think Andreas is going to take it either. Pereira is going to have the physical advantages when it comes to height and reach and speed and power. Andreas is a lot less athletic. He can mix up the wrestling, which seems to be the most dangerous thing about him against Pereira. He's more experienced grappling, so if he gets the fight to the ground, it's definitely going to favor him. Whereas Andreas' striking seems to be a bit too sloppy and slow. He is a striker. Andreas does have a traditional martial arts background. He throws a lot of spinning kicks on the feet. Most of his big strikes come off of that wheel kick, but it's going to be extremely difficult to land it on Pereira in this fight. I think as Andreas is sitting at a distance, he's going to get kicked to the leg, he's going to get kicked to the body, he's going to eat a lot of jabs, and Pereira is just going to wait on Andreas to become impatient and catch him with that devastating check left hook. And even so, Pereira's takedown defense so far against a lesser competition has been stellar. The guy's defended so many takedowns in only 4 professional fights. It definitely does seem like his height and his strength help him with his takedown defense as well, and he's been training with Glover Teixeira for years. The new light heavyweight champion of the world, who is shown to have great wrestling and some of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the entire UFC, is most likely going to help Pereira in his journey in MMA. So my prediction for this fight, I'm definitely have to go with Alex Pereira, and I'm going to go by a second round knockout. I could see a first round knockout, but I think he's going to take his time with his first UFC fight. I see him defending most of the takedowns. If he gets taken down one time, I see him be able to hold the fight into the guard, and on the feet just picking at Andreas with almost anything he wants to throw. And I can agree with the betting guys that Alex Pereira should be a heavy favorite in this fight. Great opponent picked by the UFC. And then we go to the first fight in the main card. Starting it off super strong, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Yes, they are beginning the main card with a huge bang. Definitely going to be a knockout happening in this one. And I will have to say the chin to power ratio makes it pretty even for both fighters. Justin Gaethje has great power and he has a great chin. Michael Chandler has even greater power, which is very rare for anybody to hit harder than Gaethje, but not too great of a chin. So they both have the potential to knock each other out with one given blow. And I have to say that Michael Chandler definitely commits with that right hand more than Gaethje does. He extends far into it, he throws everything behind it, and has a great amount of confidence to land that punch either to the body or to the head. And I do think that body shots are going to be a great thing for Chandler in this one, just like it was for Eddie Alvarez, a former rival of Chandler's, where he started to go to Justin Gaethje's body and slow him down. That's also going to help Chandler mix up strikes to the head as well, just like I did against Dan Hooker, going right hands to the body, eventually conditioned Hooker to drop his hands, where Chandler threw another one to the body, but then came up over the top with a left hook that can absolutely work against Justin Gaethje as well. Gaethje these days is a lot different though compared to when he fought Eddie Alvarez. He's a lot more patient and willingly to sit back a little bit more on the opponent. Back step counters, 2-punch combinations moving forward, that right straight left hook combo that he threw at Tony Ferguson was excellent. He was also to throw some similar combinations that Khabib. Now that version of Gaethje has a much better chance of being Michael Chandler, the one that we're seeing lately. For an example, the one that fought Tony Ferguson. If he is going to do what he says he's going to do, what he said in the press conference, of going right after Michael Chandler, getting in his face and just being super aggressive, no stepping back or any of that, if he fights like he did in the old days, I think Michael Chandler might knock him out. If he does not fight this smart, Michael Chandler will most likely land that right hand on him or take him to the ground. Gaethje has to be smart in this one. He cannot be prideful. If he's prideful, I can see him getting finished in this fight. Gaethje's leg kicks are going to be the most important aspect of this fight for him. He needs to land leg kicks and often because Chandler does not check them. And we're talking about Gaethje, who has one of the most powerful leg kicks in the entire sport. Inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks, and that cumulative damage is going to allow Gaethje to march down Chandler a lot easier. Engage for that right straight left hook combination or even an uppercut in case Chandler does go under for a takedown. I don't see Gaethje going for takedowns. It'd be actually very surprising if he does. Chandler, on the other hand, I could see him trying to take this fight to the ground because he has a massive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage. If this fight hits the mat, there's a huge chance that Chandler chokes out Gaethje with a quickness. Gaethje likes to give up his back whenever he hits the mat. He likes to explode, getting on all fours, getting into his base, and the opponent can absolutely get his back. This has happened multiple times in his career, even lost to Khabib because of this. I know there's a lot of pride in this fight. I know both guys do not want to go to the wrestling, but it would help Michael Chandler so much if he mixes up his wrestling with his striking in this one. In fact, if he goes to that, I might even tip the fight to his favor because of how much better Chandler is on the ground than Gaethje. But ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to have to go with Justin Gaethje in this one, and I'm going to go by a second round TKO. Michael Chandler can absolutely end this with one given shot. There's a huge chance as Gaethje tries to pressure him backwards that he walks right into a right hand and gets dropped for it. I can absolutely see that scenario happening for Michael Chandler. That power of his is terrifying, and it can be difficult for Gaethje to march down Chandler because of it. The thing I gotta give Gaethje here is, if he sits back a little bit more and tries not to pressure too early, I could see him backstepping away from that right hand, just like he did against Tony Ferguson, who had a massive reach advantage, and then countering Chandler because Chandler also overextends on that right. But what I also have to say here is, if Chandler wrestles Gaethje and gets the fight to the ground, I actually probably favor him to win, which means I do not agree with the betting odds. Justin Gaethje as a minus 210, that's a bit too much of a favor in my opinion. I think it's a lot closer than that. And then we go to Shane Burgos versus Billy Quarantillo. This fight is also going to be a barn burner. Two guys always going for the finish, all offense. Billy's way better on the defense. Shane Burgos is one of the most defenseless fighters I've ever seen in the UFC. His offense is impressive. He has a great jab, he has great combinations, he has good power, great left hooks to the body mixed up with right uppercuts and right straights to the head. He has decent leg kicks too. He has good front kicks. He has an amazing arsenal on the offensive, but on the defense, the guy is just so easily hit. He doesn't pick up his hands that much. He doesn't move his head that much. And Billy Quarantillo has deceptive power. He also, I believe, has the far better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. If he can get the fight to the ground, his chance to win this fight skyrocket. But Shane Burgos has good takedown defense, man. He's a huge guy for this division, one of the biggest guys I've ever seen at featherweight, and I definitely see him using that reach to his advantage. But the thing is, Shane likes to get a little too close to the opponent, even though he has a 75-inch reach. And Billy is just not as good at covering distance. The only way Billy's going to be able to get in on Shane is if Shane stays too close to him. If Shane just likes to stay in his face and just unload with short combinations. There I can see Billy Quarantillo countering Shane with overhands and stuff like that, and then engaging him, pressing the action on Burgos as Burgos is on the back foot now. But ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to have to go with Shane Burgos in this one. I think his takedown defense might be too much, and Billy is a lot slower on the feet. He's not as sharp of a striker, even though he has good power, and he's developing his striking greatly. I think Burgos should be able to win in the exchanges and keep a good jab on Quarantillo for the majority of the fight. So it's a close fight, but I'm going to have to go with Shane Burgos. I'm going to go by a decision win. And then we go to Frankie Edgar versus Marlon Vera. I just gotta say it, man, I'm scared for Frankie. Even though skill-wise, technically, he's superior to Marlon Vera in many areas of the game, he's coming off a huge knockout loss to Corey Sandhagen. I do not think Frankie is gonna recover that well from that flying knee from Corey Sandhagen. And the biggest thing about that was, he got knocked out in February. I understand that's 9 months ago, but he's an older guy, getting knocked out again. That's the third knockout loss in his last 4 losses. And that was way worse than the Korean Zombie loss, or even the Brian Ortega loss. And I just think his chin is nowhere near the same anymore. He performed very well against Pedro Munoz, which was actually pretty surprising, even though Munoz has very good power. More power than Marlon Vera, in my opinion. But I could definitely see Marlon Vera landing a head kick, maybe even landing an uppercut and stunning Frankie in the fight. Frankie's chin has been something that he has relied on for his entire career. Be able to withstand damage, outpace the opponent, and drag him into deep waters. I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Marlon Vera. I do think he's definitely the better wrestler. He definitely has the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has excellent top control even in the guard and unloads with heavy ground and pound shots. There's a possibility if he gets the fight to the ground, this could end up almost like the Yair Rodriguez fight. He needs to get the fight to the ground as fast as possible. He does not want to strike with Marlon Vera too long. Vera, even though he's known to be very defensive, he's so good at not letting strikes get through. But lately, he's been a lot more offensive. And he showed that against Davey Grant, marching it backwards, throwing great kicks to the body, to the leg, good jab, well-timed hooks, and all of that. Frankie is not a hard guy to hit. That has been shown throughout his entire career, and Marlon Vera has very precise shots. His leg kicks could potentially get him taken to the ground, just like Frankie's done to so many other fighters in his career. Frankie has taken down so many of his opponents by catching their leg kicks, and Marlon Vera is mostly a kicker. His front kicks and leg kicks can get him taken to the ground, and that's what honestly makes this fight pretty hard to predict, because Frankie doesn't want to box too long with Marlon. If he's going to throw punches, it has to be a quick takedown right after the first or second punch. He does not want to extend his combinations like he's usually doing. Jab, right straight, and then double leg. Something like that has to happen for Frankie for the entire duration of the fight. He has great cardio. He could definitely go the whole 3 rounds of just throwing many takedowns at Marlon Vera for the entire fight, and that's ultimately his path to victory in this one. There's almost no other way, in my opinion, he's going to beat Marlon Vera. Whereas Marlon is going to want to be more active with his punches. He's going to want to keep Frankie at a distance using his jab, uppercuts, and left hooks as a counter shot. Some knees here and there. He could even throw his own flying knees. Head kicks as he's intercepting Frankie if he has him on the cage. And the rare leg kicks and body kicks just to mix up the targeting on Frankie. And that goes right into my prediction for this fight. I do think it's close. I could definitely see a huge path to victory for Frankie Edgar. He could definitely win this fight. He gets the fight to the ground, his chances skyrocket. In fact, I might favor him. The only reason why I'm going to go with Marlon Vera in this one is because of Frankie's chin. That's the main thing going into this one. Stylistically, technically, looking at their skills, I think Frankie should win, but age is such an impactful thing in the sport. If Frankie fought this version of Marlon Vera 3 years ago, I think Frankie would have handily won this fight. But this time, I have to slightly lean to Marlon Vera, and I'm going to go by a decision win. And then we go to the co-main event. Rose Namajunas versus Zhang Weili 2. A highly anticipated rematch a lot of fans seem to be extremely excited for. So as we know what happened in the first fight, Rose Namajunas landed a head kick after gauging distance, throwing a lot of feints at Weili, and then throwing a Taekwondo-style high kick that Zhang Weili thought it was going to go to the legs. And that's the thing about Zhang Weili. The head kick is still going to be effective against her. Will it knock her out the same way it did before? It could, but I don't see that happening this time. The head kick is still going to be there. As the fight mixes up a bit, going to the second, third rounds, Rose's head kicks are still going to be dangerous and impact the fight. And I could definitely see Rose's countering game, using her counter boxing skills to be extremely effective against Zhang Weili. When Weili throws her right hand, she throws everything behind it and oftentimes shifts into the opposite stance. That is a perfect opportunity for Rose to backstep and counter her. That check left hook that she threw against Iaquinta in the rematch is going to be an excellent weapon against Zhang Weili in this fight as well. The side kicks, I believe, are going to be so effective if Rose goes to those. To the leg and to the head, sometimes even to the body, it's going to be an accurate weapon for her to check Zhang Weili at a distance, and that's the main thing going into this fight. Rose is going to have to fight this fight at a distance. Zhang Weili is a lot more imposing and powerful in extreme close range. That's where she won most of the exchanges against Iaquinta. Iaquinta stayed too close to her, exchanging combinations, and Weili's power was able to get her ahead. Rose, on the other hand, has the footwork. She's not as stationary as Iaquinta is sometimes, and when she throws her punches, she's moving while throwing. Iaquinta likes to plant. Now, the things going for Zhang Weili are her leg kicks are definitely going to matter in this one. Slow down the movement of Rose Namajunas, kind of go to the same game plan that Jessica Andrade went after Rose with. And Zhang Weili is going to have to throw a lot of feints forward instead of extending with her punches. Weili isn't as active with her feints as she probably should be in this fight. Throwing out right hands from a distance and jabs and just extending with her shorter punches is going to be very difficult to catch Rose, as Rose is going to control the distance that they're going to be fighting at. Rose is a lot better at controlling how the fight is playing out. Zhang Weili kind of reacts to many things, and Zhang Weili likes to stay in one place. She really doesn't like to move around the cage too much, and it's going to give Rose another natural advantage in the fight to create angles, to land a lot of jabs from a distance, throwing in a lot of feints so she can mask up high kicks, and even her leg kicks are going to be very effective as well, even though she doesn't go to them that much. And that is only in the striking. We have even talked about if Rose gets the fight to the ground. Rose is getting better with her wrestling. She has a sneaky double leg takedown into the outside trip. If she gets Zhang Weili to the ground, this fight might be over before you know it. So ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to have to go with Rose Namajunas, even though she is the underdog, which is actually kind of shocking. A lot of people are still riding high on Zhang Weili. She's a great fighter, but the stylistic collision here, it should favor Rose. And I think Rose is going to win this fight through a third round submission. I think she's going to drop Zhang Weili again, potentially with a left hook or a high kick, and then get her back and choke her out. And with that, we finally go to the most anticipated fight on the card, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 2. A major difference in this one is both fighters are under different coaches, which means the fight could possibly play out a lot differently than it did last time. There's a different perspective that they both have now under different coaches with different training partners. I cannot wait for this fight, man. The two best welterweights on the planet, and their first fight was so close before the finish. A lot of people thought that Colby Covington would have won on the scorecards, but he eventually fell to that power. And that was the biggest difference in their fight. Kamaru Usman's power made the difference between the two. Colby was more active for the majority of the fight. Besides the third round, he was very active for the first, second, fourth, and even fifth round, throwing out a lot of combinations, trying to outpace Usman, a lot of in-the-pocket boxing exchanges, as well as trying to throw out a lot of body and head kicks. The body and head kicks for the most part didn't really land on Usman, as he didn't mix them up that much. He didn't really feint before them, he didn't really condition Usman for anything. But it was mostly his boxing that was getting ahead for the majority of the exchanges. Headshot for headshot, in the first 2 rounds and the 4th round, Colby was getting ahead of Usman. He was able to get his head off the center line and slip those straight punches that Usman is so good with. Usman rarely throws hooks. He likes to throw a jab and a right cross, sometimes he'll throw a hook, but most of the time they are very looping and easier to see. His biggest knockouts and knockdowns were because of the jab or the right cross. And that means the biggest thing for Colby is to get his head off the center line, whether it be moving laterally, dipping to one side and then countering, or even going under for a takedown. These are the best things for Colby to win the exchanges yet again against Kamaru Usman. He was doing that in the first fight, but what started to get him caught was Usman started to go to the body. That right hook to the body instead that Colby did not defend well at all. Colby was not blocking it. He was kind of reaching down with both hands, which is something you never want to do. And I definitely see Usman going to the body again in this fight. He might be more aggressive. He might be more pressuring. He's going to throw a lot of front kicks, a lot of jabs to the face, some right crosses, and switch it to southpaw just like before and throw a lot of right jabs. In southpaw, Usman doesn't like to throw a lot of left straights. He can be pretty one-dimensional in the attacks that he throws in that stance. It's mostly right jabs, just like what he did against Gilbert Burns. But the other thing that was successful for Colby Covington was feints. And in this fight, he needs to feint a lot more often than before. In the first fight, he barely feinted in the fight. He would throw out some low feints, make it look like he was going to go to the body. Usman would drop his levels, drop his hands, and then Colby would intercept him with a right uppercut. That is going to be a same combination that's most likely going to work against Usman again. But still, the thing that's going to work for Usman is the fact that Colby, when he's on the back foot, he generally does not like to move off laterally. He likes to move off linearly. He showed this even in his last fight against Tyron Woodley, which was over a year ago. Now, he could have made a lot of adjustments to stop doing that, but I could still see it happening instinctively. And that's where Kamaru Usman can land his right cross yet again. Usman's definitely going to have to be careful of ducking his head in this one because that's something he has been doing lately. Specifically in his last fight against Jorge Masvidal, he was ducking a lot. And that creates an opportunity for Colby Covington to land uppercuts and even flying knees on Usman. Because Usman ducking his head against Colby is not going to scare him of anything. Against Jorge Masvidal, for an example, Jorge Masvidal has to respect that duck because it makes it look like Usman is going to go for a takedown. Colby does not need to respect Usman's takedowns as much as other fighters have. Therefore, Usman ducking his head can potentially just get him caught for no reason. But the thing I would love to see from both fighters is to attempt takedowns. I want to see how that would play out. It's almost like they had a mutual agreement that wrestling is just going to be negated. Like, no one's going to have an advantage, so we're just going to strike with each other. That's what it seemed like, but I really want to know for sure who is the better wrestler. Can either of them take the other to the ground? It looks like Kamaru should be able to take down Colby Covington because of the way RDA was able to set up his takedowns on Colby. The thing about Usman though is he doesn't really like to attack with a lot of blast double legs and stuff like that. He likes to shoot in on you, push you up into the clinch, and then trip you out from there. The thing about Colby though is if he could get under Kamaru Usman's right hand as Usman overextends, there is a huge opportunity for Colby to execute a takedown and get the fight to the ground. But ultimately, no matter who gets on the ground, I see them standing back up after. So the fight is most likely going to be in the striking yet again. And that goes right into my prediction for this fight. I'm going to have to go with Kamaru Usman. Now, the fight is very close again. I could definitely see Colby Covington winning this. The odds are not doing this justice at all. I mean, Usman a 3-1 favorite? That is crazy. That seems so outlandish. This fight is potentially very close, especially if Colby fights by the game plan, tries to be as technical as possible, and stay as offensive as possible, because Usman does not move his head much, and Usman does not adjust his defense. That gives Colby Covington a huge advantage when it comes to him pressuring Usman compared to the other. But ultimately, the reason why I'm going to go with Kamaru Usman is for the fact that the power is the difference. Usman can literally eat a punch from Colby and then land a right hand of his own. When they exchange with each other, Colby is always running the risk of getting knocked out or knocked down. Even though Usman doesn't have to be the more technical striker or the one who has more output, just one right hand into these crazy exchanges that Colby likes to get into, and the fight tips to his favor. And for the fact that Colby's last fight against Tyron didn't really make me more confident in his skills to make the adjustments to beat Usman. He was still moving back in straight lines and stuff. And on the straight line is where Usman is most likely going to win this fight. So I'm going to go with Kamaru Usman. I'm going to go by a 4th round TKO. But I definitely do not agree with the odds on this fight. Even if Usman is supposed to win, 3-1 favorite is way too much. And the best place to capitalize on those odds is on mybookie.ag. Their lines are some of the best to capitalize on. Potentially from this main event, the co-main event has Rose Namajunas, the champion who has defeated her opponent already, as the underdog in the fight. Even Frankie Edgar could find a way to win that. That's definitely not out of his chances. I can see Gaethje being a massive massive favor over Michael Chandler, but I don't necessarily agree with that with the ways that Chandler can win the fight. And Iaquinta Bobby Green, I believe should be a lot closer on the odds as well. There's a lot of opportunity at mybookie.ag, and you can even go and bet on a parlay, which is something I personally love to do. By lining up fighters that you're confident in winning, you can multiply your earnings, whether that be picking a bunch of the favorites or even trying your hand and putting together a lineup of underdogs. 2 or even 3 of them can win you big. And something that's excellent as well, when the fights are going on live, they have their live betting odds, which change rapidly. This was a massive win for anybody who bet on Alex Caceres 2 weeks ago, and this can definitely shine up for the entire UFC 268 card. Definitely a way to pay attention on the fights. And with all that, for your first deposit, MyBookie will double your first deposit all the way up to $1,000. Just use the promo code WEASEL to activate that offer. That's promo code WEASLE to take advantage of MyBookie's sign up offer. MyBookie is where you can win big. And like I was just saying, man, the main event I don't agree with, the co-main event I definitely do not agree with. I think Iaquinta versus Green should be a lot closer than it is. I believe Justin Gaethje and Chandler should be a lot closer than it is as well. But for the majority of the other fights, they did do them a lot more justice. It's just like the bigger high-profile fights where the odds are a bit wonky. But those are honestly some of the best to bet on. When you have odds like that are just all around the place, that don't really make much sense, those are the kind of odds you actually want to look for. And I hope you guys enjoyed the predictions, and if you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.